Harry and Meghan made a non-royal trip to New York to bring awareness to some world humanitarian issues, but they ended up drawing attention to themselves. Was this accidental or on purpose? Let's take a look at the clues in this video, including that clip where Harry apparently pushes kids away from him. Welcome back, my Body Language buddies. My name is Jesus Enrique Rosas. I'm the Body Language guy, and it would be great if you join us by just liking this video, subscribing, and hitting that bell. Let's get down to it. It's inevitable that if you're a woman in the spotlight, people are going to talk about the way you dress. That's something that you cannot escape, and I think that's a double standard because men are not remotely as scrutinized in our clothing. I plead guilty to creating my fair share of memes about Meghan on my Instagram account, like cute Imperial March, Meghan rickrolling us, or who wore Venom better. By the way, I think that Meghan is lucky that Joan Rivers is no longer with us because she would have been ripped apart. Again, I have a personal opinion about this topic. I know that Coco Chanel once said, "Dress shabbily and they remember the dress. Dress impeccably and they remember the woman." Well, if Coco Chanel were alive today, she would say that dress shabbily and people will compare you to a Teletubby. Now, my personal take on that is that there's not a good or bad way to dress, but instead what you wear should not get in the way of your personal brand or message. And every single one of us has a personal brand whether we like it or not. And the best way to understand it is the duality between a punk rocker and a real estate broker. Yeah, rhyme intended. If you try to be a real estate broker and you look like you're about to punch people in the face, you're not going to get very far. In the same way, if you want to audition for a punk rock band and you arrive at the venue with a three-piece suit, you will get punched in the face. Now, in both examples, what you're wearing is actually distracting or getting in the way of your personal brand and your message. And I think that Meghan's choices got in the way of what she wanted to say, especially because it looks like she was dressing for a colder weather, and in New York at the time is 80 degrees Fahrenheit or 26 Celsius. Again, most people don't really know what is the weather in New York City, and it doesn't really matter. But what matters is how she seems off when you see her among other people. She stands out, but for the wrong reasons. But then, we still don't know why she still chose to wear such heavy clothing. And I think the answer lies in a little detail that some netizens discovered in Harry. There are enough high-resolution photos of Harry to confirm that he was wearing a wireless microphone, wires that are more than obvious in his clothing. But anyway, there's also this mysterious cameraman that is holding what others have pointed out, specialized equipment, and in a way that is not the usual in this kind of events. We know that they got a Netflix deal and they should be producing content for it, so it would make sense that they are trying to grab some footage from their activities, right? And that would also explain why Meghan has such heavy clothing, because she'd also be wearing wires to a wireless microphone and it would be much easier to hide on heavier layers of fabric. Now, one question arises. There are more than enough media covering this trip with video and high-resolution pictures. The fact that they are documenting this trip without disclosing it would mean that they are producing some sort of fly-on-the-wall documentary, which means a documentary that looks as spontaneous as possible. And that's where we clash with a conflict of interest. Your plan is to bring awareness to a global vaccine access, to visit the 9/11 memorial, to talk about poverty and the pandemic, but all those intentions would not be genuine if you're planning to use all this for commercial purposes. Because the Netflix deal is a commercial one. It's money in their pocket. That's why it's so hard to not look at them as opportunistic. And I really try to give them the benefit of the doubt because no matter what, these humanitarian topics are actual pressing issues. But we already have the precedent of Meghan's 40 by 40 initiative that was really tone deaf, so she's got not a very good record on these matters. What I found really odd was that appearance at a public school in Harlem, and it was because of this. She was sitting down to read her book, The Bench, and that was my first question. These are second graders. If you have read her book, and I don't blame you if you haven't, you will notice two things. First of all, the content is extremely basic, and that's not bad in itself, but it's not really engaging for kids this age, especially because it's a poem that is not structured as a story. And the second issue is that this book is structured for small children, but in fact addressed to dads. The central topic is bring awareness to a father's bond with his child, which again is a good thing. But then it's confusing who the bench is written for. The very first lines are, "This is your bench where life will begin for you and our son, our baby, our kin." She's talking to the father, to Harry in this case. Now, why is all this so important? Because wherever you go, you have to know who is going to be your audience and how can you be engaging and impactful for them. If you are going to talk to second graders and you really want to have an impact, you want to know in advance which kind of music do they listen to, which video games do they play, how have they coped at home through this pandemic. That's using your empathy to be able to connect with your audience when you deliver your message. So if you want to give a message of hope, of bonding, the only way to have an impact is to know your audience. Sadly, Meghan misses the mark again, and this is why she earns another narcissistic milestone, talking about her book, being tone deaf and not even trying to be engaging with these kids. Well, I guess that she had to promote her book in order to sell all those copies she's got on her desk. I should also mention that she chose the worst possible color to dress when visiting a school, because it's not exactly red, but it's too strong and saturated to visit a place where most are wearing neutral colors. Again, you're standing out for all the wrong reasons. You're driving attention to your persona. And what about Harry supposedly pushing away children? Well, first I must mention that a lot of people was mocking Harry for sitting on the floor among the children. Like Meghan is the controller and he is just another kid looking for his mommy. But anyone that has been following Harry for the last 20 years knows that he always had the ability to connect with children. Children all over the world feel comfortable around him. He looks like genuinely having fun with them. It will make sense because he had such a hard childhood and had so many obstacles just to process everything that happened to him emotionally. This could have developed empathy towards children. So Harry sitting on the floor is not something out of place for him. In fact, that's part of his baseline behavior. That's how he usually behaves among children, and that's why that unmistakably pushing gesture that everyone saw is so odd. With overwhelming photo documentation of Harry being cool around children, what do we make of this? If you have any explanation for that gesture, I would love to read it in the comments. And I have an observation about them hugging the children. They talk about stopping the pandemic, they talk about the responsibility of every one of us, but in New York City there are schools that the children's parents cannot go inside, and even if all these children were vaccinated, they are hugging two complete strangers that have been in contact with many different people all day long. That's too much of a risk for a photo op. There's always going to be a barrage of gossip surrounding Meghan and Harry. That's a reality that just cannot be stopped. But in the middle of all that noise, there are lessons that we can learn. In this case, what we should not do if we don't want to get in the way of our own message. Because ultimately, we could be judged as hypocrites and will raise serious doubts about our intentions if it's instead of drawing attention to our message and work, we draw attention to our persona. That's something to think about when analyzing intentions. If you want to refine your observation skills, don't forget to download my 100 body language tips with the link in the description. And you'll also find the link where you can donate if you want to help me make more videos like this. Take care, my body language buddies.